Let me tell you a story. It's about a single bullet, fired 22,000 times. And it's about a lie that the world's most powerful nations all agreed to tell. You see, this is a story about the targeted murder of a nation's future, and how the brutal politics of war managed to bury the truth for 50 long years.
Okay, picture this. It's the spring of 1943. World War II is just raging across Europe. German soldiers are deep in Russia, in the Katyn forest near Smolensk, and they stumble upon something absolutely horrific. Mass graves. Thousands and thousands of bodies, stacked in layers, all of them wearing Polish military uniforms. Right away, this discovery sparks a question that's going to echo for decades.
And the whole mystery really revolves around this one number, 22,000. These weren't just rank-and-file soldiers. We're talking about Poland's military officers, yes, but also its professors, its doctors, its priests, basically the entire intellectual backbone of the nation. They'd been captured by the Soviet Union 3 years before, and then they just vanished.
So that's the big question, isn't it? Who murdered Poland's best and brightest? And maybe even more importantly, why was the real story covered up for half a century? Well, in this explainer, we're going to follow the forensic clues, we're going to uncover a secret death warrant, and we'll reveal the political deal that kept it all hidden from the world.
So as you can imagine, the second these graves were found, it wasn't just a crime scene. It immediately became a battlefield of words, a massive propaganda war fought right over the bodies of the dead.
You got to understand the timing here was just explosive. Nazi propaganda chief Joseph Goebbels saw this as a golden opportunity to try and split the Allies from their new partner, the Soviet Union. So he jumped all over it, broadcasting the discovery everywhere and blaming the Soviets. Moscow, of course, was absolutely furious, calling it a monstrous lie and pointing the finger right back at the Nazis.
But here's the thing. The clues on the ground? They started telling a very different story. An international commission, even though it was organized by the Germans, went to the site, and they found that the victims were all wearing heavy winter coats, which doesn't really line up with a summer execution in 1941. But even more damning, every single document they pulled from the pockets of the dead, diaries, letters, was dated no later than the spring of 1940. And get this, one major's diary just ends, mid-sentence, with the chilling words, "We are in a forest." All the evidence was pointing away from the Germans and directly at the Soviets.
Okay, so to really get what happened here, we need to rewind the clock. We have to go back to the very beginning of the war. How did 22,000 of Poland's most important people end up in Soviet hands in the first place?
It all starts with this incredibly cynical deal. In August 1939, Hitler and Stalin, who were supposed to be mortal enemies, signed a non-aggression pact. But secretly, there was a clause where they agreed to just carve up Poland between them. So first, the Nazis invade from the west. Just 2 weeks later, the Soviet Red Army invades from the east. And just like that, Poland was caught in a trap, and its army was crushed.
Now, hundreds of thousands of Poles were captured by the Soviets, but they singled out this one specific group of about 22,000 prisoners and handed them over to the feared secret police, the NKVD. And this is the absolute key to understanding this whole thing. Because of Polish law, every university graduate had to be a reserve officer. So this group wasn't just made up of soldiers. It was the intelligentsia, the nation's leaders, its thinkers, its creators, its future.
And then, in March 1940, we see the justification for all this, in black and white. The head of the NKVD, a man named Lavrentiy Beria, sends this chilling memo straight to Stalin. His argument was bone-chillingly simple. These Polish leaders were an ideological threat. They can never be turned into good communists, so to prevent Poland from ever rising up against Soviet control, you had to cut the head off the snake. He recommended the supreme punishment.
And Stalin? He didn't hesitate. He approved it, immediately. This wasn't some rogue operation by a secret police chief. This was state-sanctioned mass murder, greenlit by the entire Soviet inner circle. With just the stroke of a pen, the fate of 22,000 people was sealed.
So how did they do it? Well, the whole process was just clinical and brutally efficient. Prisoners were told they were finally being sent home, but instead they were taken to secret execution sites. There, one by one, they were led into a soundproofed cell and shot in the back of the head. The chief executioner, a man named Vasily Blokhin, personally killed about 7,000 men over 28 nights. That averages out to one murder every 3 minutes. And he used German-made pistols, a little detail that would, you guessed it, be used later to try and confuse the issue.
Okay, let's jump back to 1943, when those graves are discovered. because now telling the truth was, well, it was more than just inconvenient. It was downright dangerous. It threatened to blow apart the single most important military alliance of the entire Second World War.
You have to remember, the world had completely flipped upside down by this point. In 1941, Hitler had turned on Stalin and invaded the Soviet Union, and that move turned Stalin from an international outcast into the West's Uncle Joe. As the old saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
So put yourself in the shoes of someone like Winston Churchill or Franklin Roosevelt. The Soviet Union is tying down the vast majority of the German war machine on the Eastern Front. Winning the war is literally impossible without them. So when the Free Polish government in London demands an investigation into Katyn, you have this horrible, brutal choice to make. Do you pursue justice for 22,000 of your dead allies, or do you preserve the alliance you need to defeat Hitler and win the entire war?
And, well, they made their choice. Privately, both Churchill and Roosevelt got intelligence reports, some from their own people who'd been at the graves, confirming that the Soviets were guilty. They knew. But those reports were buried. They were stamped top secret and just locked away. The war effort and the alliance with Stalin came first. The truth had to wait.
So, for decades after the war, the official story remained the Soviet one. The lie held, reinforced by the iron grip of the Cold War. But the truth hadn't actually gone away. It was just waiting for its moment.
I mean, think about that. For almost half a century, the Soviet Union just stuck to its story. They were so bold, they even tried to pin the blame on the Nazis at the Nuremberg trials, though that charge got quietly dropped when they couldn't produce any evidence. And in communist Poland, you couldn't even mention the possibility that the Soviets did it. The lie was official state policy.
And then, in 1990, something happens that nobody thought possible. The Soviet Union itself is starting to crumble, and its leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, makes this absolutely stunning announcement. He officially admits that the NKVD, Stalin's secret police, were the ones who carried out the massacre.
But if Gorbachev's admission was the crack in the dam, what came 2 years later just blew it wide open. The new Russian president, Boris Yeltsin, declassified the secret files and literally handed them over to Poland. And right there, among them, was the smoking gun, the original execution order, the memo from Beria with Stalin's signature right there on it. After 50 years of denials, this was it. Undeniable proof.
So, why does this matter now? Why are we talking about something that happened so long ago? Well, because the Katyn massacre isn't just some grim historical event, it's a really powerful lesson for today.
First, Katyn is this chilling symbol of what totalitarianism really is. It's the cold, calculated decision to literally wipe out a nation's leadership. Second, it's a perfect case study in the weaponization of information, where a lie was held in place for decades by propaganda and pure political convenience. But above all, and this is maybe the hopeful part, its story shows us the endurance of truth. It's a reminder that even the most powerful countries can't keep a secret of this size buried forever.
And it is so crucial that we remember the broader context here. The 22,000 murdered at Katyn were part of a loss that is just almost impossible to imagine. During World War II, a total of 6 million Polish citizens, soldiers, civilians, and Jews were killed by both the Nazis and the Soviets.
So, in the end, the story of Katyn leaves you with this one kind of unsettling question, doesn't it? If a lie this enormous could be held up for 50 years by the world superpowers, it really makes you wonder, how many other historical truths might still be buried by the politics of our own time?